Hey students! Today we're working on our next stylistic author writing technique, which is strategic repetition for style. Today we're going to explore different types of repetition that you can use in your memoir. There are actually a lot of different types of repetition. We're also going to take a look at something called a narrative motif, which is a reoccurring element. So let's take a look at our reference sheet for today. Reoccurring lines, repetition, and motifs. This is our next stylistic author writing technique. Our learning target for today is to write with an awareness of the stylistic aspects of narrative composition. Repetition is a literary device that repeats the same word or phrases a few times to make an idea clearer and more memorable. As a rhetorical device, it could be a word, a phrase, or a full sentence or a poetical line repeated to emphasize its significance in the entire text. Repetition is widely used in both poetry and prose, throughout all genres and forms of literature and oral tradition. Aside from helping stress or highlight important thoughts and points, repetition can be a key tool for authors and speakers in developing personal style, tone, and rhythm. There are very many different types of repetition. Here are just a few that I'm sharing. The first is an anaphora, and an anaphora is the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of several lines. For example, Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "I have a dream." He repeats "I have a dream" at the beginning of several lines. This is an anaphora. On the opposite side of an anaphora, we have what's called an epistrophe. An epistrophe is the repetition of a word or phrase at the end of lines. For example, from Ralph Waldo Emerson, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny compared to what lies within us." We also have an epizeuxis, which is the repetition of the same word or phrase without any words in between them. For example, "Row, row, row your boat." That would be an epizeuxis. And here's another example, an epimony. Epimonies are a repetition of a question, and that's used to emphasize or dwell on a point. So, an example of an epimony would be Sojourner Truth's speech, where she says multiple times, "and ain't I a woman," several times in her speech to really highlight a point. So I have two links here for you. I want you to click on both of these links and explore different types of repetition in addition to those four. So I have some examples here for you to just take a look at in addition to those two links that I want you to explore today. And these examples go in and show you what it would look like in order to really showcase an emotion or emphasize a different thought that you're having. And so sometimes you can play around with multiple different types and styles of repetition in one short passage to really make something special. That's an example of the first one I have listed for you. I also have examples of what's called circular narration, which is where you take one particular line that's impactful and you start your memoir with it or your narrative writing with it, and then your characters end up in that exact same situation at the very end and you repeat that exact same line. So that's called circular narration. I also just have some quotes from some famous pieces of literature that showcase different styles of repetition. So take a look at those. One of them is actually from A Tale of Two Cities, which was an allusion in our text or memoir by Maya Angelou. And also today, we want to talk about motifs. So we have repetition of words and phrases, yes, but we also have repetition of an element in narrative writing, and this is called a motif. So when you draw attention to something very specific, it could be a setting, it could be a personality trait, it could be an object, because it's important or it's going to be important, that's called a motif. Motifs are also commonly used plot diagrams or plot formats. For example, the hero's journey, or a princess that's in distress and needs saved by a prince. When you have storylines that are repeated and used multiple times, it's also a motif. So take a look at what motifs are in narrative writing. I have some things in there for you to look at. And then today, you guys are going to be weaving in types of repetition. So your goal today in your Google Draft is to choose 3 different types of repetition. This could be a motif, this could be a circular narration, this could be an anaphora, an epizeuxis, but I want you to play with 3 different types of strategic repetition somewhere in your memoir. And then you're going to be highlighting these orange in your text, highlighting them orange. And to do that, the keyboard has to be open. You're highlighting, selecting the text here, clicking on the highlighter tool, and you're changing the text to orange. Or excuse me, not the text to orange, but you're highlighting the text orange. Okay? All right, so I'll give you some time to work. If you are behind on your stylistic author weave-ins, then you need to go back and you need to work on like the crack it open and putting in the word of the week vocabulary, etc. So today's your day to workshop and to weave in stylistic repetition. Okay, have fun.